We have life is already pretty complex right now. We have a lot more choices now than we had, a century or two ago. We could even choose, what job you're doing. That was pretty much set for you. We have a huge number of choices. Transhumanism comes along and says, we're going to give you even more choices. We're going to let you choose your body and your mind and choose to reshape yourself. And I think maybe that level of added responsibility might scare a lot of people off. Oh my goodness, I've already got enough to deal with without having to make choices about my fundamental nature. And because there are some tricky issues there if you start thinking about changing how your emotional responses work and how you think. There are some major issues you need to consider about dead ends you get into and problems that could arise. So I think that's one, is just kind of this explosion of choice and responsibility. Michael Sandel actually focused on that in his quite interesting critique of transhumanism. I don't know if you've seen that. He also came out with a book on it, but there's in the New Atlantic he has a more magazine size piece on that. I think it's called The Case Against Perfection, which of course already starts off wrong because transhumanists don't talk about perfection, but still it was quite interesting. And that's one of the points he made, was this idea about a huge expansion of responsibility. In fact, he came up with a term for it, which I've used. I like his term, hyperagency. So, as human beings, we have agency. We can make choices and act on the world, but transhumanism is about hyperagency. It's really about raising that level of ability to select how we are and how we behave to a much higher level. And he sees that as a problem. I see that as a good thing. So, from that perspective. But I think that's one of the big ones. Other big concerns, it really depends a lot on the individual, I think. A lot of people just seem to think, it baffles me. It's just so common for people to say, oh, I just wouldn't want any more years of life. And, there's various rhetorical tricks you can use like that, and Aubrey does that. You can ask them, well, okay, the average lifespan used to be 40 years. Shall we kill you at 40 because that was normal? If not, then why is it okay to live another few decades? And why not beyond that? It seems very arbitrary. But those kind of arguments, which are perfectly reasonable, don't seem to get past most people, the defenses, that there's something else going on there. They're not being quite upfront with themselves or the other person as to what the blockage is, because they really don't have any good responses to those kind of points. So it's very hard to know what's going on in people. I think they're just afraid of an unknown future with a lot of choice. And so I try to, when I talk to people about transhumanism, I try not to draw the whole big picture all at once, unless it's obviously that kind of person that you can do that with. I like to show it as a very incremental thing. We're talking about very small changes that we're already doing right now. Wearing my contact lenses right now, and we get small improvements made. Natasha got her corneas replaced, and so on. And those are all very understandable things. And then just building on that. And also getting away from the idea that you have to plan out your next 3 million years. It's as if people are thinking, well, I don't know what I'd do with all that time. But nobody's making them sit down right now and plan out 3 million years. That's not the way life works, because you can't possibly know what you'll be doing in 200 years. So they just emphasize the idea of living one day at a time. If you just keep doing that indefinitely, you're going to end up living a very long time. It's not really, they don't have to make these huge choices all at once. It's just trying to kind of keep at least for most people, just keep that transhumanist vision down into small incremental steps that are more appealing, rather than sort of showing the vast open space. They'll step back from the brink, from the abyss, and say, no, I don't want that. It very much depends on the individual, so you've got to really listen to their concerns. And then again, it's very hard, even if you listen closely. I think most people don't really know. They're really making up reasons why they're resisting. They're not necessarily the real reasons. And of course, psychologists have shown this is actually quite a common phenomenon in general, that you do something and then you come up with an explanation for it, which isn't necessarily the real one. I think that's very true in the case of opposition to transhumanism.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I guess it's easier to think about some of the near-term incremental steps to transhumanism with, the constant use of iPhones and Android phones and portable computing and all that sort of thing, and the internet and everything. I wonder if people today are more accepting than they were 10 years ago, even.
There's certain aspects of it. I think, so, the information technologies, they're quite happy to use those. But, so these more fundamental changes to the self, I don't know. I think we're clearly moving in that direction. I mean, the idea of using pharmaceuticals change personalities, become pretty mainstream, even though it's still very, very crude. Um, I think we'll get there. It's just when you distill the message into pure transhumanism, that puts a lot of people off. But just got to build those bridges and show how it makes sense in terms of the larger context.
It's well, I think the general term seems to be getting right out there. I mean, I played a couple of video games recently. One of them was Deus Ex: Human Revolution, which had a lot to do with transhumanism, and that's actually quite a good game. But also one of the most popular games recently has been Mass Effect, which is like far into the future, spacefaring, and transhumanism was actually brought up then, which is really interesting. So the terms are actually being used, which
Yeah.
I find kind of
Of
good.
course, of course, the ideas are a lot more mainstream than if you go back to the 70s. It was fairly exceptional to see, a major magazine cover any of these ideas, but now it just happens all the time. You see, Ori de Grey in technology reviews, you see things in Discover magazine. It's just all over the place, various aspects of it, whether it's talk about brain implants and augmentations or life extension. It's just become very commonplace to discuss these things. So we haven't reached the level where everybody finds it acceptable, but it's now taken a lot more seriously than it was a few decades ago. Because people can see the technology gradually moving in that direction. It's harder and harder to argue it won't happen. So they may argue it's undesirable, but fewer and fewer are saying it's not going to happen.
I watched Spider-Man last night. That is the new one
I
at
still
the
haven't seen
cinemas.
it yet. I can't believe I haven't seen it yet, but I've got to go see it.
It's not
I'm a huge
bad.
Spidey fan.
It does seem as though it's targeted towards the younger crowd. Um, but
I hear it's
yeah,
targeted towards the emotional crowd that
of
focuses
course.
more on the emotions and relationships. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And the human enhancement was a major theme in it, of course. And it was brought up in such a way that the scientist, the major scientist in the film, wanted to achieve perfection in humanity, and wasn't really thinking about any issues, side effects or anything like that. And as a result of his treatments, became a lizard, a lizard man who went around trying to
Kurt
sort of
Connors.
infect.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I
I've read
thought it
every
was
single
entertaining.
issue.
You have?
I've read every single issue of the Amazing Spider-Man. So yeah,
Yeah,
still do.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I noticed. So that's why I'm kind of surprised I haven't seen it yet. I've just been too busy, and I've got to go see it this week. The previews look actually the first preview I saw didn't look very good, but the last previews looked really good. So it's focused mostly
Great
on action.
cinematics. Yeah, great cinematics for sure. And it
You
does.
did see the Avengers.
Pardon?
You did see the Avengers, right?
Yeah,
You
that
see,
was a good
yeah,
film.
it's
That
good.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Yeah. Um, I saw a horror
Yeah, so
film recently called by Joss Whedon. I think he directed it, which was quite good.
Cabin in the Woods.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
really caught me by surprise. I mean, I thought it would be good, but when I went there, I was, yeah, wow, pleasantly surprised. It was
Yeah.
scary and funny, and yeah, so
It pretends to be one kind of film, and then it changes to a different kind of film, and then it changes again. Like there's
yeah,
different levels that you discover as you go along.
yeah, that's right. That's right. I think it was sort of taking off a lot of the horror genres in the past, which is quite interesting.
Mm.
I mean, plot holes aside, I think it was fun to watch. So it'd be interesting. Is there any really good places to look for writings on critiques of transhumanist themes in popular fiction and in the media?
I mean, critiques of fictional pieces.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
Which
the fictional pieces approaches to something that's related to transhumanism, for instance. Is there anybody?
Well, I don't know. I don't know a particular place. I mean, there's so many dystopian
Hmm,
stories, obviously,
yeah.
where things go badly because they're always mad scientists who don't think about consequences and have the sole truth. I don't know any single place to look really.
Hmm.
It's all over the place.
Sounds like a common plot device. Do you know of any good, any favoured media or favoured book or favoured film which paints technology in a very um, positive light, that looks at the brighter sides of radical advancement of technology?
It's really hard to find any actually because especially novels as well, but especially movies focus very much on conflict. So it's really hard to find any kind of positive. There are some which where things are fairly neutral. Um, but yeah, I can't really think of a good example of anything that's overall positive. Well, no, okay. I guess actually the best recent example would be Limitless.
Mm.
Uh, have you seen that one where the
I most
guy
certainly have.
is
Yeah,
a
yeah.
stroke writer? Yeah,
Mm.
because in the end it works, right? It looks like it's going to be a horrible disaster and it's going to destroy his brain, but in the end he's fine and he's prospering and he's it's stabilized and it seems like it succeeded in the end. So that overall was actually relatively positive, I think.
Mm.
Imagine a world of people who are super smart and productive like that and clear thinking. Then that was interesting. Maybe we can reduce the problems along the way that he had to experience.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, definitely. I did enjoy that film. It was. I've seen it twice now. Yeah, yeah, it's a good one.
But yeah, also I guess I like the Iron Man movie too because even though Tony Stark is not the most responsible
Mm.
guy, he's his genius has essentially enhanced his abilities by building this suit of armor using technology, and there's no kind of magic involved in that. So that's a pretty good one. He's using it well when he's not drunk. He's using it for good productive purposes.
Mm.
So,
Mm. Yeah, definitely.
I think
Yeah.
actually the whole superhero genre is very positive for transhumanism. It's
Mm.
showing people with enhanced abilities doing good things and doing their best to make the world a better place.
The X-Men, for instance. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then
Well,
here you get the enhanced villains as well.
yeah. Well, actually, that's how I got back into comics. Was after the first X-Men movie came out, I was contacted by a publisher who were doing a book on the X-Men. It's called the Unauthorized X-Men, and they called me up and said, "Would you like to write a piece on the parallels between the X-Men and transhumanism?" So I thought, that'd be kind of interesting, and I really got into it. And I think I ended up writing quite a nice piece, even though it was very poorly paid. Um, where I went through and sort of explained a bit about transhumanism and looked at some of their powers and said, which ones of these could you actually possibly do? And I think actually Wolverine is one of the more plausible ones. If you use carbon nanotubes and various things like that and super immune system, you could probably do a Wolverine. You can't really have force blasts coming out of your eyes or some of this other stuff. But it's interesting to not just the powers, but also the whole parallel between the people who hate the mutants, who want to destroy the mutant race, and send out the Sentinels to destroy them. Is really is kind of like the bioconservatives, and the diatribes against transhumanism and how it will destroy the meaningfulness of our lives, and we have to stop this horrible movement, and how it's the Fukuyama, the most dangerous idea in the world. So there's a lot of resonance with the X-Men there. So writing that piece got me back into the comic shop, and I hadn't read comics in over 20 years, and I saw all this stuff nicely printed, nicely formatted, written for adults. I got sucked back into the comics world, so I keep
Have
up
you?
with those now.
That would be a good topic for a presentation, Max. Because I mean,
Well,
this is what people
have you seen
are
my blog?
reading. I have, but not recently.
Uh, No,
Oh,
no, I haven't put anything on there recently. I'm too busy at alcohol, but I have a blog entry. It's very easy to find if you search, called "Comics of Transhumanist Interest,"
hmm.
which is, as far as I know, the most comprehensive collection of directly transhumanist relevant comics. So some pretty good stuff in there.